Are you wondering what's happening in the real estate market these days? Well, you've come to the right place. Today, we're going to look at an article that was just published in Fortune magazine that talks about what's going on with the real estate market nationally. And then we'll flip over and take a look at what's happening in Montgomery County. So let's dive right in. So this is an article that was published by Lance Lambert in Fortune magazine, and it's one of those great Fortune magazine map articles, which I really enjoy. The title of the article is How Fast Sellers Are Slashing Home Prices in America's 97 Biggest Housing Markets. Well, that's certainly enough to catch your attention. The pandemic housing boom saw U.S. home prices spike an unprecedented 43% in just over 2 years. Well, first, let me say that's not what happened in the D.C. metro market, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. Then it goes into this and it talks about all these high-powered consultants and economists who are predicting all kinds of radical changes in the real estate market. Fitch Ratings is talking about 10 to 15% national home price decline. Goldman Sachs and Zillow, on the other hand, are predicting 1.8 to 2.4% price increases. So all these people have got their crystal balls out. Mine has been cloudy for years. I kind of like to deal with what's happening today. So on we go. While industry insiders are still debating whether national house prices will post year-over-year declines, there's a consensus that some regional markets will see house price declines. To get a better idea of which markets would first see year-over-year declines, let's look at list prices. I think this is a good premise. They're sort of a leading indicator. While a spike in slashed list prices doesn't guarantee a market will post year-over-year home price declines, it does mark a trajectory change. So I think that's a reasonable way to look at things. Price drops are likely to flatten out as sellers come to terms with the shifting market. I've started to see that around here, and I think it's happening nationally. Sellers are realizing what's happened with the market and that the momentum has changed a bit and they have to adjust to the changed market. Here's the map. As you can see, the range goes from 0 up to 60%, and we'll look at some of the deep purple areas. You've got Boise over here, Sacramento, down San Diego, Denver, Salt Lake City, for some reason, Indianapolis. And then you've got Tampa, St. Pete. Then there's a lot of regions where they're sort of more in the middle, including the DC metro, which clocks in at 36.1%. Now we'll move on down here, and where they talk about the regional housing markets seeing the highest share of price cuts are the very places that saw the biggest price gains during the pandemic. Just look at Boise. Prices in Boise went up over 60%, but as the market shifted, Boise got hit the hardest. And then they talk about data collected by John Burns. Home prices are already falling in Boise. And it's not just Boise, but it's the West in general, which was where the strongest appreciation was. Going back to the map up here, you can see most of the deep purple is out here. A couple other spots, but most of it's out there. So that falls in with what I've been feeling and seeing about what's happening locally, which is that the DC market was less high-paced, hot than other markets nationally, and that's been reflected in the change in the market and the fact that the change around here doesn't seem to be quite as dramatic. So let's flip over to the DC information that I have, the local Montgomery County information specifically, and I'll compare that to some of the national stats side by side, just so you can see. So now let's look at the local numbers courtesy of Altos Research. This is data that's updated every week. And the data that we're going to be looking at is for single-family detached houses only. Altos divides them up. You can't get an aggregate for everything. they divide them up based on detached houses versus townhouses and condos. But we'll go through a couple numbers. We'll start with the Market Action Index, which is a proprietary number that they come up with based on a lot of data points. And as you can see in Montgomery County, it's 63 right now. It's down, but it's still well above the dividing line between a buyer's market and a seller's market, which they peg at 30. Over on the national side, you can again see the 30, and it's sitting at 49. So it's still in seller's market territory, but not quite at the level of Montgomery County. Now let's move down into a few numbers. We'll start with the median price of new listings, because this is again a sort of a leading indicator. And you can see that they've been sort of bumping along right around 700. And as of September 2nd, they're at 677. Over here on the national side, you can see that they've taken a pretty steady downward trend from May at 429 down to 389. So it's pretty clear that the median price of new listings has changed nationwide more than it has locally. Then we'll look at median days on market. You can see here for the county that it's pretty much doubled from 14 to 35. And over on the national side, pretty much the same story, 21 to 42. So those are on a par with each other. The absolute number is a little higher nationally, but proportionally they're about the same. Price. So then we'll look at price decreases. Here locally, you can see that they started out back in May at 18.2%, and now they moved up to 35%. And over here, nationally, 21 to 40. So again, they're sort of moving in the same range with all of them. Inventory. So we started at 511, we're up to 625. Again, these are for detached single-family houses only in Montgomery County. So it's moved up, whereas inventory nationwide, 338 up to 552. So as a percentage, it's a much bigger move nationwide. And then the last thing we'll look at is the Market Action Index. You can see back in the spring, it was at 95% in Montgomery County. And it's moved down to 63%. Versus nationally, it was at 66, down to 48. All right, I'm going to take a minute and kind of wrap it up and put a bow on it. Just to give you a little perspective so you can understand where the DC market and the Montgomery County market sits versus other parts of the country. The national number that Fortune magazine quoted was 43% appreciation nationwide for the past couple years. If you look at Boise, from May of 2019 to May of 2022, the appreciation was 80%. Austin during the same time period, 73%. The DC metro area, all of the close-in DC metro, was 30%, 31, just a little under 31. And Montgomery County, 32%. So just for historical perspective, Montgomery County and the DC metro in general, they have seen appreciation sort of over the long haul in the annual range of 2, 4, maybe 5%, depending on the time period that you use. So they clocked in at very close to 10%, both of them. So that's great appreciation by historic standards, but not even close to what was going on in other parts of the country. The market is adjusting. The market's still a strong seller's market. Values seem to be holding pretty steady. Inventory's low and demand is still strong. Now, what's going to happen in the future? what's going to happen when the Fed raises rates, because they will. But how much they do and how that impacts people's mindset, we'll just have to wait and see. And what'll happen, how that'll impact the economy as a whole, we're just going to have to watch. I'll keep an eye on things and I'll let you know. If you would like to see the Altos data research for your zip code and get an update, or for the area in general, and get an update every week or once a month, whatever you want, you can get a customized search. All you have to do is click on the link below. And if you have any questions for me, happy to help and love to talk real estate. You can either leave a comment in the remarks or my contact information is below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.